creating curiosity by asking better questions. This is Shed Talk. Well, today on Shed Talk, I'm here with Craig Elias. Do something, learn something, do something better. This is an entrepreneur that's going to change your ways of thinking. Craig Elias. Did I get that right?
Elias.
I know, I was close. See, Elias, I knew I had to say it because that's the most beautiful thing. Hey, thanks for coming on Shed Talk. I actually had to make sure I did it that way because I have known you for like how many years? 20 years?
It's been quite a while, ever since it was a Small Business of the Year award. I don't remember when that was, but it's quite a while.
Yeah, that's like about 25 years ago.
It's been a while.
And we had met way back then, and so that's why I had to get the name pronounced and make sure I did it right. I go, after all these years, I don't even know. It is so good to see you and have you on Shed Talk.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, I got to ask you, here we are, as an entrepreneur, knowing you back then, what's going on?
Wow, lots. So I have this super cool job as the entrepreneur resident at Bow Valley College. So I have a side thing around boutique sales consulting, but at the same time, I'm trying to find a way to help more people become first-time entrepreneurs. So we run almost 100 events a year online, trying to figure out how do we crack that nut so more people become first-time entrepreneurs, and how do they do it sooner?
So how do you collect and find these guys? Like, how do you find young entrepreneurs? So young entrepreneurs want to get started. How do you recognize an entrepreneur?
Wow, that's a really good question. How do I recognize? So I'm going to say there's probably a couple things. First of all, they're good old-fashioned GSD. Am I allowed to swear?
No.
Okay, they get stuff done, right? There's that whole piece, and it's also something around what I've heard called Ohio, only handle it once. So if I'm on a call or someone comes to see me and I suggest they reach out to somebody, those that do it right away, those are the people that are going to get stuff done. It's called the good old-fashioned act, learn, act model instead of the learn, act, learn model. So when I see people willing to take risks and learn by making mistakes, those are the guys and gals I want to spend more time with.
So interesting. So these guys, what you're saying, I'm just going to sum this up because the KISS formula.
Yeah,
keep it simple.
Yeah.
And these guys that are actually called. So if they're reaching out to you to ask, if they get back to you within 24 hours, did you get back to them?
So all the time. In fact, I'm more times than not, if people reach out to me, what do I say? I live up to what I say. I'm the guy who's going to phone them, text them. I'm not good with email. I'll call and text people right away. Email, I just find it takes too long to write. I'd rather just talk to somebody than type it all out. And plus, when someone reads it, you can't hear it the same way that you read it. So I'm like, I will call people. One of my little pet peeves is if people, and this happens on occasion, if they reach out to me via email but don't put a phone number in their signature, first thing I say is, where's your cell phone number? It's like, I'm not going to email you. Call me. Let's talk.
Interesting. So these guys that are reaching out, what's the first question they ask you?
Wow. So it's guys and gals. So it's across the map.
Sorry,
right?
I better make sure that I'm clarified because we're going to get into this about the woke crowd too, because this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah,
okay,
totally.
so back to that. Sorry.
So what's the question that they ask? It's really around how do I get started? Like, what's the first thing I do? I've been told I should write a business plan. Should I write a business plan? And I'm like, no way. You never write a business plan because, well, I shouldn't say never. Unless a bank asks you for a business plan or a VC asks for a business plan. The problem is we all write them and then they get put up on a shelf and never get looked at. There's all kinds of other stuff you could or should be doing first. And I say to them, first, you got to figure out what's the problem you're trying to solve. Because if you're not solving a problem, no one's going to pay you.
So once they solve the problem, they say, okay, my parents think I have a great problem here, or sorry, I have a great business here, but it's not really a problem. They think they have a cool widget. What do you say to that?
So first of all, I'm going to say your parents' opinion doesn't matter. The first thing I'm going to say, your friend's opinion doesn't matter. You got to figure out who's going to pay you to solve this problem. And only the people that are paying you, that's the person or people whose opinion matters. If you come to me and ask for advice and I think your idea is great, I'm like, but my opinion doesn't matter. If I'm not in your target market, you're talking to the wrong guy.
So once you've talked to them,
yeah,
what's the next process?
So for them, it's go away, interview total strangers. We have a very specific sequence of questions. So I've been working extensively with some really cool people on the planet, Ash Maurya, David Bland. We have a very specific sequence of questions that we get you to go ask total strangers to make sure, A, you've got a problem that people are aware of. They're spending money to solve the problem. They're unhappy with the way things are, and you can figure out where can you go find those people. Because just because you've got a really good idea, if you don't know where to find your customers, you're going to spend a ton of money and you're not going to get very far.
So out of the people that do that, they say they're going to,
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs, how many actually do that?
Hey, take a minute and smash that subscribe button. And let's get back to the episode.
Wow, that's a really good question. I think it depends, and I hate that answer, especially from university days. It's like the answer is always it depends. I think it depends how motivated they are. I think it also depends, can they do it with somebody else? In the weekends that we run for student entrepreneurs across the province, I would say 80% of them will go away and interview 25 total strangers in an afternoon to get to the point where like, okay, now I have enough data. But I think the reason they get to that number is we give them a target. If we just said go interview total strangers, didn't give them a number, then they might do a whole lot less. But we say don't come back until you get at least 25. Sometimes they come back and they've got 30.
Interesting, because you'd actually see these young people that are getting set up to go and they're looking for great advice. They're all that in a bag of chips. And then all of a sudden you get to see the 1% of the 1% of the guys, all of a sudden he has 60. And then all of a sudden it becomes that. So how does that play out? Can you actually tell who are going to be the cream of the crop at the beginning?
I'm going to say generally yes. And again, it's the same thing. Those that are willing to act, those that are willing to be wrong, and those that are willing to learn. And we then, in the stuff we do, we then send 3 of these people down to what is called Draper University every year. And every year I've done this, if I ever had someone not come back, I think every year these kids go down and they go to this 5-week boot camp. It's called hero training. And every year, one of them comes back with either money or being picked the most investable out of everybody in the group. Keeping in mind, the group that's going into that program is not just student entrepreneurs. It's entrepreneurs across the planet. So we skill them up, send them down, and they come back with 6-figure investments on a very regular basis.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And these have, now, do you have to be a part of Bow Valley College? Do you have to be a part of the university?
No.
Can you just be a Joe Blow student from, I don't know, he finished grade 12 and all of a sudden has a great idea and he's got that passion, that itch to do it?
So if you're a student, definitely falls within my sort of inner circle. I tend to focus more on the post-secondary school students because they're over 18. I keep myself out of trouble. Doesn't mean if you're under 18, I can't help you. I have 3 female entrepreneurs that came in from a private school this past summer that got some help. But yeah, I tend to focus on those that are 18 or over. And you could be from any publicly funded post-secondary school in the province, and you're totally welcome to find me on LinkedIn, reach out, and I will totally give you help. That's part of a program called 150 Startups, which is funded partly through the Hunter Family Foundation.
Oh, interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So when I started at Bow Valley College, I'm just helping students in my own school. And I started looking across the province and I said, hang on a second, there's only 5, like a handful of schools in the province where if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, you can get help. So I went to go see Derek, the son, to share this crazy idea because I wanted to find a way to help students in all of the publicly funded post-secondary schools. And I went to see him, and I'm 5 minutes into my conversation, and he's like, Craig, you know what? Can I write you a check? Like on the spot. I then said, hey, there's a bank that does some stuff with the school on occasion. Maybe I should go see that bank. And I go to see this lady at the bank, and I tell her what I'm working on. And she's like, wow, Craig, you have no idea how good this is, but I can't give you any money because your school is about to go on a hiatus. We've given you some money. There's a 5-year hiatus where I can't give you any money for 5 years. She said, if I wanted to give you money, I'd have to write to the board of the bank and ask for an exemption of policy. So I left, a little deflated. By the time I got to my office, which is less than a 10-minute walk, there was an email in my inbox. I've written to the board of the bank to ask for an exemption of policy. And 2 weeks later, she gave me a check for $50,000. The year after, a check for $50,000. And then I went back to the Hunter family, and they agreed to give me several $100,000. And the bank decided they would give me $500,000 to go do this program, helping students become first-time entrepreneurs. And once you got money, everything else is easy, right? Yeah, that's just, I generally don't ask for money. It asks for advice. And it's amazing how money shows up.
That's absolutely an amazing
It's
story.
crazy,
And that is crazy. So during this whole time,
Yeah.
you're getting the money coming in, you're developing the program. Was there a bricks and mortar building that it was at?
So so good question. We started my going to all the schools across the province. I would drive and do stuff on all the campuses. So January to March, I'm putting in a fair bit of mileage. Then COVID comes along. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, we need to do this virtually. So now all of a sudden we start doing this virtually. And then for me, what got really interesting is people that were non-students were participating in things I was running for students. And the next thing you know, instead of having 30, 50 people on, all of a sudden there's 50, 100, sometimes 500 people on some of the stuff that we're doing because now it's all virtual. And then when we went back to being in person, I still do a lot of stuff virtually, or if it's not virtual, it's hybrid. So yeah, now it's kind of gotten way beyond what we used to do just in Calgary or Alberta. So the session I just finished, literally every province in the country, throughout the US, Brazil, Mexico, France, and New Zealand, people show up. And this is the power of doing things online instead of just doing them in person.
Wow.
It was crazy.
That is absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here going, and then?
Well, so this is a good question. It's hard to really know. So I think part of what helps me is I have this massive network on LinkedIn. So I've been on LinkedIn since day 8. So I'm more than 20 years on LinkedIn. There's close to 1 billion people that are on LinkedIn. I'm user 3,956. Yeah, totally.
3,900. You actually know that number.
So way back then in the early days, the URL for your record was your number in the database. And what I have been told, but not verified, is the first 2,000 were actually even dummy pieces of data. So I might be user 1,956 of almost 1 billion users. So having that network, and I've tested this. So I've gone into LinkedIn and said, how many people in my network are founders or CEOs? And it's north of 11,000 of the 30,000 people that I have are those kinds of guys and gals, just like you.
Wow. And that's where I'm going to call you up and say, here's a guy that's Calgary connected and everywhere. And I get to learn so much off of in every single part. So let's get back. I got to get back to the actual virtual and 500 people coming there. So what's the takeaway?
So that's a good question. It varies depending upon the event. So I'll give you an example. One of the things I love to do is called Founder Fridays. So every month between September and June, I pick a different author or a book, buy 100 copies of the book, read one. I now do this with a lady named Brandy Old. We both read it. And then what happens is we put the author on a Zoom call. Upwards of 500 people show up. We then ask questions based upon how we read the book and what we thought was important to the startup community and the tech sector in predominantly Western Canada. We then interview that person. And at the 45-minute mark, we give away a link. And if you give us your mailing address, we will ship free copies of the book anywhere across the country and then come back 2 weeks later and say, how do we apply that to your business and how do we apply it to the ecosystem?
So how would you apply that to your business?
So it's going to, again, it depends upon the book. I'm just going to
just throw one out.
So I'm going to pick Mike Michalowicz.
Okay.
I love Mike. He wrote a book called Fix This Next. And he talks about the most important thing you got to figure out is sales. So you got to figure out sales first. Once you figured out sales, then you need to figure out profitability. And once you figured out profitability, then you got to figure out structure. So what you do, and Mike has actually come to Calgary. We had him on a virtual event and he was so good. I'm like, you've got to come to Calgary. So he agreed. He has a price, which is pretty significant. And I told him, I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it to make a difference. This is the most I've ever paid anybody. He says, okay, I can do it for that much. He was supposed to fly in from New York on a Sunday afternoon during the Calgary Stampede, supposed to fly in from New York and then speak the next day in the morning for VIPs and the afternoon for entrepreneurs. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. It's Sunday. I'm in the grandstand watching the grandstand show, and I start getting these texts from Mike. And he's like, the plane hasn't left. I've been on the runway for 90 minutes. They're shutting down the airport and sending us back to the airport. And he's supposed to talk the next day. I'm like,
Hey, take a minute and smash that subscribe button. And let's get back to the episode.
how is he going to get to Calgary? And I said, okay, well, maybe he can go through Denver. So I'm texting my son going, hey, what's the first flight out of Denver to Calgary? It doesn't get to Calgary till like 11:30 in the morning. I'm like, okay, what's the first flight out of Toronto? He says the first flight out of Toronto was 6:30 a.m. So now the only problem is Mike has to get from New York to Toronto, but the airport is shut down. I'm like, what are you going to do? He says, I'll rent a car and I'll drive. And he drove 9 hours through the night to get to Toronto to catch a 6:30 flight to come here and do a session. And those are the kind of folks.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so impressed. His morning session was good, but his afternoon session was so good. Like literally when I talk about it, I am close to tears. It is that fantastic.
So the takeaway from everybody, because you guys obviously told everybody about the story, here's how a guy that actually, as an entrepreneur or book reading, whatever it is, what it takes to actually, what you say is what you do, is you got to be here now and you do it. Hell or high water, you have to be there. And then all of a sudden he shows up there and everyone's just going,
It's a crazy story. And here's the thing about entrepreneurs, though. I think every entrepreneur's got a crazy story. Like my crazy story of winning the $1 billion idea pitch competition. It's like, what? Tell me that story, right? So
I never heard that story before. Hint, hint.
No, really?
No, I had. You know what? Now this is a great time. You got to tell a little bit about that one too.
Sure. So here's what happened. I was a top performing sales guy for every company I ever worked for, right up until the day I joined a company.
Oh, before you go further,
Yes.
before you ever worked for, what other company have you worked for?
Well, I've worked for a few tech firms in the past. So I worked for a company called AMP. So when you put two things together, and whether it's a computer or a phone, those things called connectors, I was an industrial sales guy for them for a while.
Okay.
Got parachuted all over the country, ended up in Vancouver, and then went to work for a customer. I had this coolest job. My job was to create distributors and resellers in Europe, Africa, and South and Central America. And I had friends all over the planet, never spent a weekend in a hotel. It was totally cool. Went skiing all over the place. Yeah, that was my... So as a sales guy, I did that for 16 years. Then joined WorldCom. Everybody remembers WorldCom, $11 billion in accounting fraud. I joined them the day before 9/11. So of course, 9/11 happens. Nobody's buying anything, but like always happens to me. Got lucky, less than 6 months. Number one sales guy in the entire country. But I went from hero to zero in 21 days because that's when they admitted to conducting all this accounting fraud. So I go home that day, and the lady I was engaged to and had been with for 6 years, she says to me that day, if there's no security in my job, she's not having kids. And she wasn't really sure if she wanted kids or not. And I was like, well, I want to be a dad. And 3 weeks later, she moved out. And this was just before I turned 40. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I'm like, hey, what do I have? A car, a dog, and house payments. Let's go do something. So I had this crazy idea for an information exchange between salespeople, started something. Within 5 months, got into this competition for billion-dollar business ideas, told everybody I was going to make it in the top 10, because if you get in the top 10, you actually get to pitch to a very famous venture capitalist for 5 minutes. So I tell all these people, especially in Calgary, I'm going to be in the top 10, I'm going to be in the top 10. And they all say, you're a snotty-nosed first-time entrepreneur. You have no idea what you're doing. Never going to get in the top 10. Turns out they were right. But it turns out, for whatever reason, on the day Tim was supposed to pick 10, he actually picked 11. And guess who was the 11th? I was the 11th. And I got my 5 minutes of fame. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a go of this. And I did a pitch. I had 5 minutes. I was 30 seconds into my pitch, and he's already asking me questions. And I could only think one thing. Tim, I only have 5 minutes. Can you please just shut the up? Because I want to get my whole 5 minutes in. And what I realized is he'd heard everything he needed to hear in the first 30 seconds. And I talked to him afterwards, and he said, in the first 30 seconds, I decided I wasn't going to give you $1 million. I decided if you needed it, I would give you 5. So I ended up moving to California. Now, as life would have it, what happened before I moved to California? I met a lady. Her name is Heather, and she plays French horn for the orchestra. She's a church minister's youngest daughter, and we're both in our 40s. Like this time we're 40, almost 41. So what we decide is we can't wait to get married to have kids. We barely started dating. I have to move. You have to stay. I'll commute every other week, and let's just see what happens. Now I'm married happily, and I have an 18-year-old son who's doing mechanical engineering at USask.
Wow, that is a great story.
Yeah.
So you go back to the pitch.
Yes.
Do you actually remember the pitch? Can you remember that first
Wow.
30-second pitch?
So that's a really good question because here's what I've learned. What I learned is I said 3 things he wanted to hear. He heard how big was my market. He heard my business model, and he heard how I could make this defensible so nobody else could borrow my idea. And then what I told him was that I had put my career and my life on hold to make this whole thing work. And I think that was the moment where he's like, that's the guy who's going to win this contest. And that's so I still chat with Tim on occasion. It's actually his boot camp that I send students down every summer. And he gives me 3 $12,000 US scholarships every year to send kids down because kids go down, wow, everybody. And every year they're like, send me more, send me more. So yeah, that's my Tim Draper $1 billion idea pitch competition cost story.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you don't remember the pitch?
So I don't remember exactly the pitch.
You got to
because it's been a while, but I do have I still have the slides and I still have the script that I wrote. And all I remember is just saying that I have a way to capture 20% of the entire North American GDP that's in the heads of salespeople and to be able to commercialize or convert that 75% of the time.
So when you hear other kids pitch to you, does that come into your head, your pitch that you did? So when you go back and when people are pitching out there, whatever they're pitching, and go, oh, I know how that feels.
I think it's different for me than it is for most of the people that I spend time with. So you have to keep in mind, I'd been in sales for almost 20 years when I did my first pitch. So, and whether I like it or not, I'm a sales guy at heart. So it's easier for me to pitch because I'm trying to pitch to make the sale, where what I find very often with students and first-time entrepreneurs, they're trying to pitch the product, not the opportunity. And it takes a while for them to make that switch, to not spend all the time talking about their product, not about the investment opportunity.
That's an interesting statement to say that, because how many people are actually thinking about, I got to sell my product versus pitch my product? That is a really interesting concept.
Well, I'm going to say sell my product versus pitch my business. Right? That's where it takes them a little while to make that transition, because when they pitch the first time around, it's like product, 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 product. And I say to them, if you've got 5 minutes, you get 30 seconds on the product. That's the only time you get. Everything else is not about the product.
Do you believe in elevator pitches?
Sort of. So I believe in something called the 7-second sale.
So let's explain what an elevator pitch is first, because maybe young entrepreneurs actually don't understand what an elevator pitch is. Do you want to explain it?
No, I'm curious what your version or how you would describe an elevator pitch.
I describe an elevator pitch as exactly that. You get in an elevator, you have 30 seconds to tell everybody who, what, where, when, why, and how. Not as fast, exactly what you do, and leave with an emotion of a great feeling. That would be my elevator pitch.
So here's the challenge I have with elevator pitches, is that by the time you're more than 10 seconds into an elevator pitch, I've already forgotten the first thing you said.
Correct.
So the way I come at this is, how do you find a way to do what I call a 7-second sale? So how do you find a way to tell people the problem you solve for who in 7 seconds or less, so people now start asking you questions? Because I want to try and find a way to have them pull on some thread instead of me pushing rope. So if I can go to somebody, and if I was doing this from a corporate perspective, what I normally do, I would pick up the phone, and I still cold call on occasion, pick up the phone, call someone who's new in their job, like a VP of sales, and I would say, hi, Kevin, my name's Craig Elias, and I have a really simple way for more of your reps to make quota. That's my pitch.
Oh, interesting.
And
How would you do that?
How would you do that? And that's the way the game gets played. And here's how the game gets better. So the problem is when someone says, how do you do that? We tell them, we puke all over them. This is how we do that. It's a Jeffrey Gitomer thing. So the way I come at this is like, you know what, Kevin, I can tell you how, but can I ask 3 really quick questions first?
Okay.
Sure, yeah. So my first question is, how many sales reps do you have?
I got 5.
Okay, and let's say 500.
Okay, 500.
Okay, and then what percentage of the time do they consistently make quota?
Hardly at all.
Yeah, it's like less than half.
Yeah.
And then I say, well, what do you why do you think they can't make quota? And they go, because they don't close. And that's when I say, Kevin, I don't think your reps have a closing problem. I think they have a completely different problem. Would you be willing to invest 5 minutes to talk about what that problem really is and how you can solve it? Because so far you have no idea what I do. You're like, Okay, I want to know the answer. Sure, you can have 5 minutes. And that's when I would say your problem's not a closing problem. It's a prospecting and qualifying problem. Here's why I say that. Here's how you fix it. And this, for me, is when you engage someone and don't tell them everything all at once. They want to learn more. And that's the way that I come at this elevator pitch. I'm going to give you 7, maybe 10 words. And if you're not interested in what I have, you're not my target customer. I'm not going to waste my time, but you'll remember what it is that I do. How do I solve? What problem do I solve? Not how do I solve that problem?
Absolutely.
That's the way I come at elevator pitches. And it's super easy, but it's super hard for people to go, how do I not tell everybody everything about what I have in the 30 seconds that I've got? Yeah, that's a switch.
A mind switch to get everybody
Totally,
on
yeah.
that. So on that process, when you're talking that, okay, how long of a sales process would that be? From the first initial pickup,
Yep.
you say, give me 5 minutes. Would that be calling having another phone call, or would he actually give you the 5 minutes right then?
So, Doug, good question. So I always like to say, do you have 5 minutes now or should we reschedule for later? And if they say reschedule for later, the other thing I always say, great, if we're going to reschedule for later, here's my only ask. I want a second person from your company on that call. Because I don't want you wasting my time. And if you put a second person on the call, that's my way of qualifying you. You're not going to waste your time on somebody else's. So therefore, there must be enough interest. There is a cool guy who came to Calgary for me not that long ago. His name is Donato Diorio. And his research says that a second person on your first call makes people 3 times more likely to be your customer. So it's a way that I qualify people. If they say now, I will take the now because I don't want to push them off. But if they say later, great, I can do later. I just need a second person on the call. Or on the visit. I had a VP of a bank show up once who wanted some time. And I'm like, yeah, you're flying into Calgary. You want to spend 30 minutes with me? Not a problem. All I want, second person in the meeting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. I love that.
You can tell I'm a sales guy, right?
Oh no, and I'm sitting here and I'm soaking that in because I'm also thinking, okay, because you're the sales guy and great at what you do, how do you get past the gatekeeper?
So I don't think it's hard. So I have
let's talk a lot of people might not know what a gatekeeper is.
So I'm going to say a gatekeeper is kind of old school because what would happen is you would either A, go visit someone, you get past the receptionist. Okay, so you need to be relatable. So the word that I like to use is called propinquity. So propinquity is the impact of nearness, which means can you have anything in common with the person you're having a conversation with? So, and I had accounts when I did industrial sales. You went to visit them in the old days. Totally get it. Same thing if you have a main number. You got to get past the gatekeeper. These days, it's easier. So one of my tools that I use is called Seamless, seamless.ai. I can go to anybody's LinkedIn profile, whether I'm connected with them or not. I can use this Chrome plugin. And if I just go to, let's say, Kevin Halliday, and there's a magic button that now appears next to your profile that says, go find me Kevin's contact information. And it will find your email address, it'll find your main office number, and amazingly enough, on many occasions, it will find your cell phone number. But I don't always know which is which. So what I do, because I have an Apple phone, is I try to text you, and if it's blue, then I know that's your cell phone. Yeah, so gatekeepers are not as relevant as they used to be and not as hard to get past. It's just you got to get past people's sales shield to get around them, to be able to help them understand, okay, I'm not selling a product, I'm trying to solve your problem. And if today's not the right day, I'll come back later.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, another quick question I'm going to get it because we're going through this. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So another one is that the younger generation, and I look at the younger generations as in under 25.
Okay, so half my age or less.
Correct, and mine. Well, and then some. One of the biggest things is answering the phone.
Yeah.
I have noticed, and talking to other entrepreneurs about this, and say they're hiring receptionists or they're hiring people, and the greatest problems that they have, and I don't know, and tell me about this, is that they can't physically, and they get scared of answering the phone and saying, "Hello, you've reached Middle Stairs and Railings," versus, "Oh no, it's not my mom." How do you see that?
Hey, take a minute and smash that subscribe button. And let's get back to the episode.
That's a really good question. And partly because my wife also suffers from that a little bit. And I think it's purely a fear of rejection. So if you can find a way to teach people that rejection is just something that you have to go through. I was in a leadership program a little while ago, and they talked about obstacles. And people say, well, you're always trying to find a way to get around the obstacle. You're not trying to get around the obstacle. You're trying to go through the obstacle. The obstacle is the way. Good old-fashioned Mandalorian. This is the way through the obstacle. You've got to find a way through that, because otherwise it's going to get in your way for the rest of your life. So however you motivate yourself, sometimes I joke. I say to people, they have to go hire a carpenter. And they're like, hire a carpenter? Why do I want to hire a carpenter? So they can build you a bridge and you can get over it. Right? You just got to get over it. Some people can't. Some people won't. Some people will.
Why always the shirt orange?
Wow. How much time do we have?
Yeah.
Here's my orange shirt story. I used to teach entrepreneurship at U of C. Got myself in trouble for two reasons. Students became entrepreneurs and they got grades that were too high. So one day they decided they were going to replace me with a PhD. I was a little bitter, I will admit it, because I put a ton of effort into that. Somebody on campus asked me to go facilitate an offsite meeting for all the faculty and all the staff. And at the time I had one shirt. It might have been peach or salmon. And the dean of the business school at the time introduced me as the guy in the bright orange golf shirt. And all I could think to myself is, this is not very bright. Watch me go. And I have shirts. They're no, like, these are pretty tame compared to what I used to have. But I started buying the brightest orange shirts you could possibly imagine. And that was my form of protest. And it just became a thing. I now have 51 different orange shirts. That's how it came to be. It was a form of protest. And then it just became a brand. And people know it. So I'll go all over the place and people will spot me out. So when I took my son to university, we went to go for dinner and some guy says, are you that Craig Elias guy? And I'm like, how did you know? He says, the orange shirt. So that's now why I keep it, because it actually works.
Craig, this has been outstanding. You got to tell me a little bit about Go Zigzag.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite stories to tell. I am what is classically called a conference hacker. I will go find the coolest people that are speaking at a conference. I'm like, do I have anything in common with those people? And I found this guy named Scott Ford, who was the ex-COO at Techstars down in Boulder, Colorado. Well, I'm actually a mentor for Techstars in Toronto. So I said, hey, you know what, Scott? You know, we've got this Techstars connection. You're coming to Calgary. We'd love to connect and just hear your story. So I got to spend a few minutes with Scott. He tells me about this tool called Go Zigzag. So gozigzag.com. You simply write a single one-line description about a business or a business idea, and it goes away and does an entire go-to-market strategy, 12 pages. Does it for you all on the fly. Does all your stuff around what's called a lean canvas. It does all your validation questions. Does it all on the fly. So I'm like, wow, super cool tool. I need to write something about this on LinkedIn. So I wrote something on LinkedIn, shared a link, shortened the link so I could track it. And within 3 days, it had been seen almost 30,000 times, and that link had been clicked on 1,000 times over. And Scott texts me and says, Craig, I don't know what you've done, but people are signing up like every 3 minutes. So super awesome guy. I had to do something for Bank Venture Forum. They asked me to do some roundtables. I called him up and said, hey, you know what, Scott? I've got these roundtables. I think artificial intelligence should be one of those roundtables. I can't pay you. I can't pay for your airfare. I can't even pay for your hotel, but would you come up and do a roundtable? So he came up and did 2 roundtables. They were both booked solid before anybody else's roundtable was taken. Then I'm like, okay, I need to do more. So I then said, hey, how about you, a guy in Boston and one of my favorite people in Lethbridge, Brandy Old, how about we do a session on how to use artificial intelligence to scale a startup? And next thing you know, a couple of people have signed up. I did a session today, which was how to know if your idea will fly, put it at the bottom. It's just that awesome tool that allows you to take a lot of the early stage work that is super hard for entrepreneurs to do and gives you something like a straw man, but not just a template, but it's filled in with artificial intelligence telling you these are the things you should at least consider. It's a fantastic tool. I have some pretty senior artificial intelligence folks in my network, and when I shared this tool with them, they all had the same one-word response. Wow. Yeah,
Wow to AI?
Wow to Go Zigzag. Just what they were able to do. In fact, they just won an award at some World Open Innovation Conference, I think, for the best use of artificial intelligence in a startup.
That's amazing.
Yeah, super cool guys.
Well, Craig, thank you very much for the insight on this. This is going to take it one step further. The things we know that we don't know.
Now you know.
Now you know. Thanks, Craig.
A pleasure. Thank you, Kevin.
Now you know. Shed Talk.